It's a beautiful day. The sun shines bright as it moves across my face. I feel the light and everything is in its place. Oh, I woke up feeling great. Today was made for me, and life is good the way it should, the way it was meant to be. And it's a beautiful day. Are ringing, children playing in the park while birds are singing. I am walking, and I am laughing, Life is perfect, I'm not trying, it's just happening. And it's a beautiful day.
3 years ago, they told us that we started to get the word that Microsoft is working on an operating system. It was going to be the sequel, obviously, to Windows 7. So 3 years ago, we're all thinking, well, what's it going to be? Here are a few things that could be changed. It was going to look like Windows 7. It would be faster. It'd install. It would, make better use of RAM. It'd be more efficient. And then about a year and a, like 2 years ago, we started getting a wind of what I will always call Metro. I'm sorry, I don't care. I'm going to call that Metro till they put me in the ground. We got a wind of the Metro interface, and we saw how different Windows 8 is. I'm sorry. I'll give you my take on Windows 8. I think Windows 8's obviously it's gonna be released on October the 26th. That's the release date for Windows 8, and I believe the Surface as well. Windows 8 and Windows RT or Windows 8 RT. The difference, obviously, is Windows RT is the operating system for Microsoft devices that run on the ARM processor, ARM processor. The ARM processor, I'm assuming you guys know this, but just to refresh, the ARM processor is basically more efficient and lasts longer than the Intel processors do. So that's used for the lighter tablets. And then Windows 8 Pro is going to be running on Intel processors primarily. So I get asked all the time, what do you think about the new operating system? What do you think about the prospects of it succeeding or it failing? I think we're going to know a lot more in January of 2013, to be honest with you. I think what's going to happen, it looks like a lot of the OEMs are putting together a bunch of devices. They're putting together laptops, hybrids, all-in-ones, desktops, what have you, rotors, tilting, flipping, detachables, whatever. All kinds of form factors are going to be available starting in October and going all the way through Christmas, New Year. A lot of people are going to go to your Best Buy, your local store, and they're going to basically see a lot of Windows 8 devices. We're going to get a better idea of what the consumers feel by how they shop. Are they going to go for all-in-ones? Are they going to go for the tablets? Are they going to go for Windows RT tablets? It's pretty impossible to say that we know what's going to happen. I don't think Windows 8, we've gone through this operating system for 3 years with a fine-tooth comb. There are things you can criticize about it. There are things that you can say are really amazing about it. But at this point, we don't know how it's going to work. I think if you had to ask me, what I would say is I think that I would not look at Windows 8. I wouldn't look at it as the end. Rather, I think this is the beginning of a structural shift for Microsoft. So I don't think Microsoft is saying, here's where we're going, we're going to get to it, and it's just the beginning. And I think that there might be some criticism at the beginning. There might be some confusion, fear, uncertainty, doubt, whatever. But I think that, if Microsoft worked through it, I think everyone's going to be okay. So, people have said there's going to be a massive consumer backlash, but I don't think it's that bad. But there will be some turbulence. So.
I agree with a lot of what Onuora said. When it comes to some of the devices that we're seeing early on for Windows 8, frankly, a lot of them don't make a lot of sense to me. I don't understand the use case behind a laptop that has a display on the front and the back so that two people can sit across a table and use it simultaneously. I don't really understand the value of this Dell XPS 12 where you open it and then flip it and close it back down and it's a tablet. It seems to me like the OEMs are a little bit confused as well about what Windows 8 is or what Windows 8 does, and kind of throwing stuff at the wall. And like Onuora said, we'll see in January which one of those actually sells and which one they pull the plug on. I think that this is a long game for Microsoft, and like Onuora said, this is step one. If I had to predict, I'd say Windows 10 is the end game of this. This is a transitional operating system, and I think, and I don't have any inside information from Microsoft, I think ultimately they'd like to see Windows become what Windows Metro Modern is. but they can't just throw out Windows and switch. So they had to give you a transitional baby step that still has Windows 7 in the background, but gives developers something to build for on the new side. And I think over time, they're going to try and push people that way. In the short term, I don't think it's going to do that well. Windows 7 is a phenomenal operating system. I love Windows 7. I've always loved Windows 7. I can easily see Windows 7 being the new Windows XP. This is the operating system that 8-9 years from now, we're still going to be telling people, look, can you please get off of Windows 7? Seriously, we have Windows 11 now. We're on Internet Explorer 15. Can you just switch, please? It's a stable operating system that works well. So I think it's a hard selling point to try to give someone Windows 8 and explain why there's no start bar, and if you swipe over here, then this happens, and all these things. Windows 8 is good. I like it, but I think it's a hard sell for especially for consumers and to some extent for businesses as well. The big wild card, I think, will be tablet pricing. I think there is an opportunity for Windows 8 on the tablet side, especially on the RT side, but it's got to be competitive. And so far, the rumors that have come out about Windows 8 tablet pricing haven't been all that promising. I mean, I think I've seen something about an Asus or Acer one that was going to be $1,100, $1,200. I have a Samsung Series 7, which, if you go to the Microsoft Store, I think it's a $1,200 tablet. And if I can buy 2 iPads for the price of the RT tablet, I'm not buying the RT. So we'll have to see how that plays out. So.
Do either of you guys see a killer app that would, a specific thing that would be offered through Windows 8 that's not yet offered through Windows 7? I'm seeing some similarities to Xbox, and I'm wondering if Microsoft is kind of adopting the same thing you have in home, have in office. What do you see?
Yeah, I'm not so excited about a killer app, as in one killer app. I do think this is a tale of many audiences, right? So with Windows 8, I think a lot of the architecture of it is directed at consumers, but I think there's a lot of business value that's going to be uncovered over the next 3 years. I mean, you could look at stuff like, well, it's more secure. You can look at Windows to Go. Now, I used to work in ERP, PeopleSoft development and consulting and HR. And I'll tell you, Windows to Go is fantastic. The concept, if it works as they say it works, which I think it does, it's pretty fantastic. For those of you who don't know, Windows to Go basically is being able to take a USB, a tiny little USB, and store a Windows 8 profile on there. Yeah.
I think actually where they're going to go good on that is when they have it available on their phones. They'll plug the phone anywhere and have their desktop.
Yeah, well, the phone is, we'll get to the phone.
I just said that where it's going to really make a difference is when you can plug your phone into your computer or a device, and your operating resides on your phone. So you can take wherever your phone goes, obviously goes wherever you go, is now your computer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, Windows to Go is going to be very, very, I think it's going to be successful for businesses. The ability to get a contractor, to say to a contractor, when you start work on Monday, all we need from you is to bring a laptop with you. And when they bring a laptop, you give them a USB drive, they can start working immediately because you've already provisioned all their accounts on the back end. But you don't need to find them a new PC or a new laptop for this contractor. You just give them a USB drive and say, here's a seat, welcome to Dell, or wherever they're working. Yeah, so I think with the security and with some of those features, I think the businesses are going to start uncovering, I'll get you, layer after layer after layer. The other thing is the metro applications. I think that when businesses start to understand what the like contracts, for instance, what contracts, the power of contracts and the ability to develop apps and the ability to convert legacy apps into these graphically rich user interfaces. I think right now everyone's kind of shocked by it, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see a lot of businesses, accounting businesses, HR packages, if they take advantage of the Metro UI, there could be some success there. Yeah.
Now with the Windows to Go, it being put on a USB stick, what are the security pictures that, they getting stolen or has anybody discussed that matter in like business?
Yeah, my understanding of this, I think his question was, what are the security ramifications of having a profile on a USB drive? You want to talk to that? Or I can talk to that. Okay, yeah, so my understanding is, and correct me if you guys, my understanding is that profile that's on the USB drive is built as a standard profile that's locked down with all the standard rules and regulations that you would. The advantage is, if I'm a contractor and I bring my laptop in, and I connect my laptop, you don't know anything about my laptop, you don't know how secure it is, you don't know if I have malware on there, spyware, viruses. But when you have a profile that's been created by the IT department, locked down by the IT department, it has certain authorizations and authentication by the IT department. You kind of know what that profile is about. And I think the benefit is, because it's so locked down and restricted, there are restrictions on what can be loaded onto that PC until you take the USB drive out. But I'm not too concerned from a security perspective.
Which brings up an interesting point about Windows to Go, which is you have to have Windows 8 Enterprise. So that, Is it in Pro now? Because I just looked that up this morning.
BitLocker is not the.
BitLocker is. I'm talking about Windows to Go though. BitLocker is in Windows 8, is in Windows 8 Pro, but the Windows to Go is not. And it's been a long-standing complaint of mine with Microsoft, with the Windows versions, about what makes it to one doesn't make it to the other. With Windows 7, my general advice was always just get Ultimate. If you know you have everything, just get Ultimate and stop worrying about what the features are. I've always had a problem with Microsoft taking things like BitLocker and not putting them in the consumer version. I understand that there might be some confusion there for consumers. To maybe they don't understand and they end up encrypting something and lose the key or whatever. But you should at least give the option. And I think that the consumers are often the ones who need the security more. I mean, the enterprise has an IT department. They've got security admins. They've got other tools to figure that out. The consumers need the tools, and Microsoft always leaves them off the table. So in this case, yeah, I mean, you have to have Windows 8 Enterprise for Windows to Go, for direct access, for branch cache, for app locker. All the cool stuff requires Windows 8 Enterprise.
I think you said it was a profile. It's actually a OS boot.
Yeah, actually, the first time I played with Windows 8, Microsoft just sent me, they sent me a USB key and said, here, plug this in. There's Windows 8. And I have to admit, I thought that was pretty cool.
And then going forward, Windows 8 is also going to drive the conversation about BYOD, bring your own devices in the enterprise. So it's a very interesting conversation. People have said for a long time that Apple iPads are media consumption devices. That's what they say. That's what PC people say. Well, it's not really a big device. Yeah, so what? It's sold how many 100 million copies? It's not a real work device. It's a media consumption device. And the truth of the matter is, we don't really know, right? I mean, you can say, well, I've tried an iPad and I can't really do much work with it, but we don't really know, because tablets are so relatively new. This Christmas, we're going to find out whether consumers really care about that. If January 2013 comes and goes and Windows RT devices, which don't have a desktop, outsell Windows 8 Pro devices, then the lesson to take away from that is they don't really care about doing work. Maybe the use case for tablets is tablets are for media consumption. So that's something that's going to be interesting. We're going to find out in the next 3 months. For everybody who's talked about businesses really wanting a PC tablet, they're going to get tons of them in the next few weeks. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah.
Depends on how you define consumption.
Correct.
I've got several customers
I agree. I think that that's always been a red herring, that whole like media consumption thing. Oh, I'm sorry. No, he said he has a bunch of customers who use the iPad to do work pretty much, and it works really well. Right? Yeah, I've always thought the media consumption thing's kind of a red herring, if you ask me, because ultimately, I think what's going to happen with Windows 8 tablets is you're going to have companies create applications, rich applications with Metro, or the modern UI, what do they call it now? Modern. Whatever, right, Metro. And I think those applications are going to be applications where you're going to be able to do real work. You're going to have ERP applications. You can't tell me someone with an iPad using PeopleSoft HR or SAP isn't doing real work. But the nature of the work is just different. If I'm able to use my fingers, typing numbers, hit enter, just because I don't have a keyboard doesn't mean I'm not doing real work. It doesn't mean it's media consumption. So I've always thought it's a red herring.
And on that note, I think one of the things that, again, price is the big X factor, but one of the things that will possibly set Windows RT tablets apart is Office. We already know they're going to have the Office apps by default. I love my iPad. I've loved the iPad since the iPad came out. I use the iPad all the time, but I've also spent a fair amount of time trying to find suitable apps to replace Office. So, I've used Pages and Keynote and Numbers from Apple, and I've used Docs to Go, and I've used, all these different things, and none of them is Office. So, if the Windows RT Office, works the way it should, that could be a selling point. And the one thing we have to look at right now that suggests that the Windows RT Office apps will be good is the OneNote MX app. OneNote MX is a very well done app. I mean, if Microsoft's trying to show developers how it's done, I think they set the bar pretty high. OneNote is also part of Office 2013. You can fall back into desktop mode and use the normal OneNote, but the OneNote MX app is designed for the touch interface. It uses the touch interface well, and if they come out with the rest of the Office apps in Windows 8 RT tablets, and they are as solid as OneNote is, I think that makes it a compelling use case.
Go ahead.
So you guys have both been on the leading edge of Windows 8 pretty much since its inception.
More or less, yeah.
More or less. And I'm not. And my clients are coming to me and saying, hey, what's Windows 8 all about? Can you just sort of, and if you think it's appropriate, can you just sort of run through a sort of bullet list of what some of the key features are and why you think it's going to be, a game changer for Windows evolving to Windows 10? So when my client comes up to me and says, hey, what's Windows 8 all about? What am I going to tell them?
Okay, I'll give you the Tommy Reller speech.
And Tony had mentioned something about App Vault and some other things that, that's sort of new. I've never heard about App Vault.
Okay, so here's I'm agnostic, by the way, but I'll try and do a Microsoft Pro pitch here. Okay, Windows 8 is the largest and most radical transformation of Microsoft's Windows ever. It is the new version of Windows that's taking Microsoft from the traditional desktop age into the mobile age. It's going to have a couple of different user interfaces. You're going to have the best of both worlds. You're going to have your traditional desktop that you're familiar with and used to in Windows 7, and you're going to have the new modern UI, which is tile-based and works arguably better with tablets. But Microsoft's position is you shouldn't have to choose. So they're going to give you both. And they're going to give you both. And, and Microsoft are being very, very smart about it. They say the official position is Windows 7 today, Windows 8 tomorrow. That's what Tammy Reller said, the vice president for one of Microsoft's VP. You can have Windows 7 today and upgrade at some point. It's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so again, you guys have been with 8 for the beginning and stuff.
Okay.
So just clearly, is 8 in your mind, and just paint a quick analogy.
Okay.
Is 8 like the Vista before?
That's your question. I'm kidding. Okay, so thank you for that question. His question was, is Windows 8 Windows Vista? Again, are we going down the path of Windows Vista? Are we recording this? Because I didn't know, just kidding. Okay, I'm going to answer that. No, and I think people have started to say that, and to be fair and to be honest, I don't think that's the case. And the main reason why I don't think that's the case is, in my opinion, Vista had problems. Vista had structural problems. There were bugs. It was slow. It didn't work that well. Those are structure. Those aren't like perception. That's just a fact. And people just clung onto that and said, I'm not going to go from something that works to something that doesn't work. That was the prevailing sentiment of the day. Windows 8, say what you will about not understanding it, say what you will about being new. The sentiment about it working is, I mean, it's not an issue. It does work. It does what it delivers. Now, whether you understand the UI mix, whether you accept it, whether you want your start menu back, whether you think it should be two separate, UIs, those are opinions and they're subjective. But I think it's not a Vista because it does work.
All right, I'm going to take a slightly different angle on that. In that, first of all, I don't even really think Windows Vista was a Windows Vista. I had some issues, day one with lack of hardware drivers for certain things. I think those were relatively quickly resolved. And I think the primary failure of Windows Vista was Microsoft's failure from a marketing perspective. And they let their competitors outmarket them on things like UAC. Nobody ever understood UAC. It's been lambasted as this horrible thing that Microsoft did, and it has value, and they haven't taken it out. It's still there. So I think Windows Vista was fine. They just lost the marketing war. I'll agree that I don't think Windows. Actually, I'm going to agree and disagree. Windows 8 is going to be a Windows Vista from the sales perspective, just like Windows 7 is going to be the next Windows XP. But like he said, it's not going to be Windows Vista because it's bad. It's not going to be Windows Vista because it doesn't work. It's just going to be Windows Vista because it's new, and Windows 7 is so great that people are going to stick with Windows 7, and they're not going to go running to get Windows 8. To answer the question previous about what you should tell your customers, and I'm going to give away part of my presentation from this afternoon, but my own sentiment is, if your customers are already on Windows 7, there's really no compelling case for upgrading to Windows 8. That's my own opinion. I mean, there might be some niche cases that you could make. If you really need a specific feature of Windows 8, I think there's still a pitch to be made for the Windows 8 tablets as a separate thing from upgrading the operating system as a whole. But if you're already on Windows 7, I wouldn't upgrade my company from Windows 7 to Windows 8. If my customers are on Windows XP or Windows Vista or God forbid Windows 2000, then I would say yes. And from a consumer perspective, the consumers who are still clinging to Windows XP, I think they very much should make the switch to Windows 8 for two reasons. Number one, Windows XP support's going to end, and number two, Microsoft, for the first time ever, is sweetened the deal. So if you can upgrade for $40, you should upgrade for $40 while you can, because by February of next year, it's not going to be $40 anymore.
Yeah, my slight disagreement there was, if your customers came up to you and said, should we upgrade to Windows 8? I would say the answer is it depends. And even if they're on Windows 7, it depends. If they're on Windows 7 and your customers are coming to you and it's time for their refresh cycle, I wouldn't tell them to refresh back to Windows 7 again. I'll tell them to go ahead and go forward. And there are a bunch of things, there are a bunch of reasons why. Because there are a lot of third-party vendors, Retro UI, Start 8, among others, who are coming out with tools to alleviate the whole start menu or booting directly into the desktop for the enterprise. I think that's one of the biggest criticisms, that people don't want to see the tiles. For businesses, they want to go right into Windows and start working. Businesses miss the start menu. They want the start menu back. So there are enough third-party tools coming out where if your customers are about to do a refresh and they have older PCs and they're about to get brand new PCs, I wouldn't say go to 7. I have a PC. I'm not going to rush out and get Windows 8 because I like my PC. It works. I have 8 gigs of RAM. I'm a blogger, right? I'm not doing PhotoCAD or anything like that or AutoCAD or whatever. It works for what I do. If my PC died, I'd get a Windows 8 PC. But I wouldn't, because I have Windows 7 and it's great, I wouldn't rush out and get Windows 8 right now just because. Now, if I had an older PC that was kind of sluggish and I had to go get a new PC, there's no question. Because Windows 8 is, from a performance perspective, is just a lot faster, a lot more efficient, takes advantage of a lot of the cloud integration. And it has the support of Microsoft. You know that Microsoft are 100% behind it. So and I have no inside information about this, but your customers, if they're about to buy 500-600 PCs, are probably going to get a good deal early, right? Because Microsoft want this to happen, and all the vendors, the OEMs, want this to happen. So there are going to be a lot of good fireside discounts, at least for the first 3 months. So there's a caveat, right? So it just depends. Yeah.
I suffer and benefit a lot from customer stupidity, and when it comes to customers allowing things through my antivirus, my malware detection, everything else, and I'm kind of wondering about when you look at the Windows 7 active tiles and the active content and things like that, I'm worried about exploitation by malware and spyware and other things like that coming through, and that active content being always accessible. It makes me nervous because my users click on anything and boom, they're infected, and then yes, it's stressful.
I'll give this to the security guy.
All right, so the question, for those of you in the back, is related to the active tiles in Windows 8 and how you have content that's being updated, and what kind of security risk that poses, because as you're probably all aware, people will click on anything. I would start by saying there are a couple, and again, I'm giving away my whole thing, so none of you need to show up this afternoon. There are a couple key things that Windows 8 does for security. First of all, Microsoft Security Essentials, which is currently a free separate download, is rolled in as part of Windows Defender. So Windows Defender is now a complete anti-malware package. The caveat being, Microsoft also gave permission to the OEMs to disable and replace it. So there's still probably a 95% chance that if you bought a PC from Best Buy, it's going to have a 90-day trial of Symantec or a 90-day trial of McAfee or something else on it, and it's going to have Windows Defender disabled. But it should still be there, and you can turn it back on. The other thing is the way Windows 8 takes advantage of UEFI and Secure Boot, which has been a source of controversy because anti-malware vendors, Linux aficionados are concerned that they won't be able to even boot up or load their stuff on a new Windows 8 PC because it's going to require that the code be signed. Okay, he says he wants me to back up and go over UEFI. UEFI is an open standard. It basically replaces BIOS. So it's the new BIOS. Technically, there's still a BIOS there because you still have to have something that kickstarts the motherboard, but UEFI sits as like a layer above the BIOS. So instead of doing the Control-Alt-Delete to go into BIOS and having the whatever white text on blue background or whatever color your computer is, UEFI is a more full graphic interface. It makes it easier to work with the devices. It also has access to all of the hardware. So even from within UEFI, you still have access to Wi-Fi and USB ports and everything else. So, and you can access it remotely. So there's a lot of advantages to UEFI. It's not a Microsoft thing. It already exists. It's already in a lot of the current hardware. Microsoft is just the first with Windows 8 and Windows Server 2012 to actually implement the secure boot aspect of it. So with secure boot, you eliminate, or at least greatly reduce, I won't say eliminate because malware developers are very resourceful and clever. So I'm sure there's a way around this. But basically, you virtually eliminate the risk of boot level malware and rootkits that get into, before the kernel and under the OS, because they can't start because they're not signed. So those are two things that, sort of in Windows 8's defense. When it comes to the active content, I think there probably is some risk, the same way there's risk of, going to, CNN.com, and that it's possible to, use, attacks that can funnel the malware into the ads on a known good site. So those things I think are possible. I don't think it's a big enough risk that it would change my mind about Windows 8. Like I don't think I would tell somebody, yeah, don't do that because you're introducing this malware risk. Yeah?
Windows 8 is very close to being released, but yet as of last week, Lenovo in their ThinkPad line doesn't have a single model with a touchscreen. And some of the stories I've heard is that they don't expect the enterprises to be doing, or the small businesses to be using the touchscreen. They're going to stay with the mouse. Where do you think that's headed, and how long away are we from some of these vendors being able to provide touchscreen? It seems a little difficult when you're going to go out and recommend it, and you've got one more thing to check for if it's going to support Windows 8 and the touchscreen.
Lenovo's always a year out of date.
Yeah. Well, he said Lenovo is almost always a year out of date. So.
There's a little word I disagree with.
Okay, and another gentleman says there are some Lenovo touch devices, but let me address the broader. Okay, well let me address the broader question of the touch devices. I don't know how Onuora feels. I definitely prefer Windows 8 as a touch interface. I put it on my my traditional Dell laptop. I don't like trying to activate the charm bar with a mouse. It seems like I have to hover over there for like 10 seconds to get it to finally pop up, and I think it's tedious to use with a mouse. So I would definitely recommend a touch device for Windows 8. That said, I mean, there are vendors out there, and I happened to, my son was doing some research for something he wanted, and I happened to be on the Logitech site earlier this week, and I see that they actually have trackpads, coming out, like the Magic Trackpad from Apple, that will, let you interact with touch to a non-touch device. So there are going to be, I think there's some opportunities for third-party hardware vendors to step in and fill that gap, like Logitech. And I think, as we were talking about earlier, there are so many different form factors coming out. It's almost ridiculous. And some of them are touch, some of them aren't. Like I said, my personal belief is I wouldn't buy a new Windows 8 hardware that wasn't touch enabled.
And that to me is one of the things that's very fascinating about this rollout, this release. This is going to be a test case for so many different things. I personally, regarding the touch, I think touch belongs on tablets. I can't deal with a touch laptop or hybrid or whatever. And the reason why is, I think he used the right word, tedious. Reaching out and swiping 20, 30 times, that whole process, it doesn't seem to lend itself. I would rather reach down. I think that feels more natural to the arm. But that's just me. And once again, the consumers are going to make up their minds about what works. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to just love, having a laptop they can use their fingers on. Some won't. So, sure.
He reminded me, and this shows you how much I use it because I needed him to remind me. I have my monitor on my desktop is a 23-inch Acer touch-enabled monitor, which when I got it, I thought, this is really cool. This is back in still Windows 7 days. I didn't even know Windows 8 was coming yet. And the novelty wore off in about 90 minutes because I don't want to, like, this is not a natural motion. I'm sitting at my desk, and I don't want to be reaching out across my desk to tap things on the monitor. It doesn't make sense, which is why I have a trackpad. I have a touchpad on my desk that I use in place of a mouse, and it lets me interact with the touch. But it definitely doesn't work to have a monitor. I mean, it might work with the laptop. I mean, it might, right? But yeah, I mean, touch doesn't really work with a desktop.
And it fundamentally depends on what you're doing as well. Because I can see there was maybe 6 months or a year ago, there was a picture of Steve Ballmer with an 80-inch screen behind him. And if you're trying to be a CNN spokesperson going through the weather, then that might work for you. But I mean, they're going to be, to Microsoft's advantage, there are going to be so many different form factors for this that, yeah, if something doesn't work for you, get something that does. Yeah.
Questions for you. Do you see Connect for Windows as changing that situation? And the other question is, do you see Windows 8 being the end of service packs?
Yeah, okay, I'll start with the service packs. I don't think so. I don't think it's the end. I mean, I think it's a change to the way service packs are delivered, and maybe whether they'll even be called service packs. But in terms of what's a service pack, right? The vendor sends you software that's installed at a certain time, and the software updates certain functionality. So whether it's called a service pack and it's official, that comes on a disk, or whether it's done at midnight while you're sleeping, a pack's a pack. Regarding the Kinect, we'll see. I've always thought that, my cousin has a Kinect, and I've seen it work with the Xbox 360 or whatever. It's an interesting concept. I've always thought it would be interesting to have a smaller size Kinect that worked on desktops that could be used in offices. But once again, it's like he and I had a conversation about NFC, right? You guys have seen the Samsung ads on TV where they're like touching phones and like, what are you guys doing? And well, it sounds really cool, but what are you going to do with it? Like, it's one of those things that when you talk about it, it sounds really great. And if I was sitting in a cubicle working and I had a monitor in front of me, I had a baby Kinect in front of me, running Windows 8, and I could do all this. Well, what does that do today? That doesn't do Photoshop. That doesn't do accounting. So it's one of those things where it's a chicken and the egg, because yes, if that functionality exists, then it's going to drive the development story. People will start developing for the hardware. But it's going to be a chicken and the egg for a while, and we're going to see how it ends.
Okay, so on the Kinect side, the Kinect is too, as he was just pointing out, the Kinect is too crude. It's when I'm using the Kinect with my kids, you're standing in the living room and you got to do all this just to get it to realize you're standing in front of it. And so that I can't think of anything you could possibly do with a computer where you have this entire range of motion just to do something. There's a third party, and it slipped my mind. I can't think of it. Yeah, Leap. Okay, so I've already pre-ordered this Leap thing, which is supposed to come out in January, February, something like that. They've got tons of developer interest, and their thing, it's tiny. It's the size of like a USB thumb drive, and it projects a field that's like like 2 cubic feet or something like that, and it can read your motions like down to a finger within a few millimeters. So it's way more impressive than Kinect. So I think that Leap has the advantage here, and if Microsoft wanted the Kinect to compete, they need to really step up the technology significantly. On the service pack side, I hadn't really thought of it, but based on what they just did, I think it might be the end of service packs as the magic Band-Aid. It might be the end of service packs as, well, if we just wait for Service Pack 1, that'll fix everything in the operating system, because they've already updated the operating system. It's not even out. But the other aspect of a Service Pack is that it's a roll-up of all of the patches that came before it. And in that regard, I think you'll still have a Service Pack because it makes sense. Because a year from now, if I'm installing Windows 8, I don't want to then apply 300 different updates. I just want to apply Service Pack 1 and be done with it. So in that respect, I think Service Packs will still exist, but I do think Microsoft will actually roll out the updates on a more regular basis rather than waiting for the big magic Service Pack.
You don't think about anything, probably reads from the website, but what are the other backup compatibility to current server operating systems and policy processing and things along those lines for smaller and medium-sized businesses?
Frankly, I don't know. I'm going to pass this off to Onuora and see if he knows. But I mean, what little I do know is that the Windows 8, the standard Windows 8 version doesn't do group policy. You have to have Pro or Enterprise. But yeah, I'm not really sure how that's going to work in terms of backwards compatibility.
What was the question?
He was asking like what Microsoft has put in place in terms of backwards compatibility for existing server operating systems with group policy and things like that. Actually, I'm gonna go all the way to the back.
On that subject, there's a few roll-ups already up at Microsoft sites where small business server has rolled to now start doing the client-side extensions and compatibility with the policy.
Okay, so.
They'll just roll up 6 of SPS 2008, and they just roll up 5 of SPS.
Okay, so for anyone who didn't hear, he said that there are actually roll-ups available from Microsoft that add some client-side extensions and. Okay.
We've already been deploying Server 2012 into SPS environments and as DCs for our cluster deploys, and there's no real issue with group policy. There's some backwards compatibility. There's a whole list of new policy settings that we have access to with GPO structures in 2012 that are awesome and will be very applicable to SMBs going forward. So realistically, impact zero, access to new features, pretty good.
So one of the things we haven't touched on, well, thank you for that. One of the things we haven't touched on is developer interest in applications for the store. And it's going to be interesting because I think that, so the controversy a few days ago, or I guess ongoing controversy, is there are about 4,000 applications now for the Windows Store. And people are saying, oh, they only have 4,000. And my response is, it's not even out yet. How do you criticize something that has 4,000 apps and not even out yet? I've had a chance to talk to a few business owners who actually run development houses that create applications and rich media applications for companies. And I've got to tell you, I was surprised about how excited they are about the ability to use HTML5, JavaScript, etc. I think that's going to be something that could be a creeper because one of the people I spoke to, his name is Naveen Jain. He has a company in Oakland. He made the argument to me. He said, a client comes, his company does a lot of rich media application development for entertainers and pretty much a lot of large companies. He said, typically companies come to me with a budget. They're like, I need to get an app developed that's going to reach 500,000 people, and they're going to have a budget. And he said, up until this point, I have said, let's take your money and let's build an iPad or iPhone application. Now, he says, the story is absolutely not clear anymore. He says, if somebody comes to me with a budget and they say, I need to reach 500,000 people, my answer will be, I'm going to develop this for Windows 8 because it'll be faster to develop, and just by virtue of the marketplace, you're going to have access to a lot more people. And I think as that sentiment starts to, grow and spread, people who are jumping in and building apps right now, they have something, from a business perspective, I think it's really smart. I mean, you have a marketplace that eventually is going to, if this is a failure, reach 100 million people, 150 million people, 170 million people. That's crazy. And you could be the first, one of the first 4,000 applications to get in there and get a brand and use social media and build buzz. And why would you want to go to another marketplace that already has 800,000 apps and try and struggle to get eyeballs there? So I think it's something, it's one of those things that it can be easily be demagogued, and people just like to throw numbers out there, 4,000. But I would keep a real close eye on that one to see if developers really pay attention and really get excited about that. Because if they do, they have some really good tools available.
Well, on that note, one of the things we talked about last night was there are some key players missing from this party, though. And with the rollout 2 weeks away, there's no Facebook app, there's no Twitter app, there's no so there's some the big players. I don't think there's a Netflix app. I have Box, I have Evernote, I have Kindle, and when I go into the store, I see the 4,000 apps, but they're all I don't know. There's a lot of apps that do silly things, just like you go into any app store. I mean, when you go into Apple's app store and there's 800,000 apps, there's probably 150 of them I care about, if that. And so one of the tricks too for Microsoft, they really need to tighten up that store, I think, a little bit. I think it's not very intuitive. It's not very friendly to surf through. I mean, I've gone in there a few times and just kind of browsed around, but I was telling Onuora earlier that when you go in and you click on, say, lifestyle, they have them categorized. You go into the store, all the apps are categorized. And so you click on, social or entertainment or games or lifestyle or whatever, and when you click on it, it pulls up all the apps, and there's, I don't know, 5 or 10 down, and then they just go across. Now, one thing I like about the Microsoft Store is that it gives you the user star rating and the price right there. So you don't, at a glance, you can tell whether people like it and how much it costs. But what I noticed is that I could not understand what the order was of these apps. And so I looked at the top. There's a drop-down list. You can reorder sort them, and by default they're ordered by noteworthy, with no explanation of what that means or who's deciding whether or not it's noteworthy or anything like that. And alphabetical isn't even one of the options on the list. So there's noteworthy, there's like price high to low, price low to high, but I think the store needs some work, especially if the developers come to the table, and if they get from 4,000 to 100,000 to 200,000, they need a cleaner way to help people find those apps.
Yeah, that was one of my big pet peeves with the UI in the first place, but the Windows Store, I just never got the whole, there are 50 things, I need to scroll through all 50 like this to get to the end. I couldn't, it drives me crazy. So I think the UI still could be, like you said, could be cleaned up a little bit. But I think there's a developer story there for sure. I mean, I think that there will be a couple of millionaires made who just got in and said this makes sense and built a little buzz and sold their app. Yeah. I should know that answer. I'm.
Well, there's a downgrade. You get downgrade rates.
Was that at the enterprise level?
It's at least at enterprise level, but I think
Yeah.
with Pro, I think.
Yeah.
What was the question?
So the question was, he said that when Windows 7 was deployed, Microsoft gave people the ability to downgrade, and gave them downgrade rights, and he was asking if the same thing was available with Windows 8. The ability to downgrade back to Windows 7. And I think I've seen that or heard that before. I'm not sure right now, but I'm pretty sure that, yeah.
Can I update the fellow's hardware question from the back, from the field hardware for Windows 8?
Sure.
He was asking about Lenovo. Lenovo is shipping right now, I can order them. There's 2 full multi-touch Lenovo business ThinkPad models. There's a bunch of consumer ones, but there's 2 business models. There's a ThinkPad, regular traditional ThinkPad twist. Looks like a regular laptop.
Sure. And the Yoga. Sure. Sounds good. Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you very much.
Across my face, I feel the light, and everything is in its place. Oh, I woke up feeling great. Today was made for me, and life is good the way it should.